Today I'm going to be talking about pointe work. It's like the ultimate of all ballet training, and boys and girls can do pointe work now. It's become quite popular for boys to learn pointe work as well, and the same factors apply for boys as well as girls who want to do pointe work. I'm also going to give you some tips on how to strengthen yourself ready for pointe work, and also I'm going to give you some actual exercises that will help prepare your feet for pointe work. My name's Claire and I am a ballet teacher. I've been teaching ballet and dance for 10 years almost to the day, and I used to dance professionally. I had a 20-year career and I now teach, and I want to share with you everything that I know about ballet specifically, but also that this applies to dance in general as well, because a lot of what we learn in ballet is also applicable in other dance forms. So, pointe work. This is aimed at someone who is either wanting to strengthen their pointe work, someone who is maybe ready to do pointe work or hoping to be ready to do pointe work and wants to enhance the training they're already receiving, someone who maybe an adult who's thinking, is it okay for adults to go and do pointe work? For maybe someone who's about a young teenager who's thinking, am I ready yet for pointe work? And maybe someone who's a bit younger than that who's thinking, when will I be ready for pointe work? And that is quite a big question. First of all, I do need to make sure that you know that this is not a video to actually get you on point. Yes, if you're dancing, if you're training in ballet, you do need to be working with a teacher. This is not something you can do at home with a YouTube video. It is too dangerous. If you don't learn pointe work properly, with a teacher who's giving you feedback, looking at your feet and saying, oh, you need to be slightly angled this way, that way, or engaging your core, or making sure your hips are neutral. You need to have that teacher looking at your work, making sure that you're correctly placed. Yes, otherwise you could develop bad habits, which are, number one, really difficult to get out of, but number two, can cause injury, and that's the bit that's really the big issue, because you do not want to get injured from doing pointe work. And if you do it incorrectly, if you do it too young, or if you do it without the strength and technique that you need in order to do it safely, you can injure yourself. So please, please do not use this as a class for pointe work. Use this as an additional source of knowledge to enhance the pointe work classes that you're already doing with your teacher. Okay, so that's my serious bit over with. There are a few factors that come into it, and I'm sure if you're studying pointe work or you're hankering to study pointe work, you've already been told of some of these already. The general consensus is that you don't start pointe work until either you're round about age 11 or you've had your growth spurt. The reason for this is that prior to that, your bones are still a little bit soft. Not even going into the strength aspect yet, you're probably not strong enough if you're younger than that, but also the most important thing is that your bones are still a bit soft. As we get older, as we mature, our bones gradually ossify and get much more hard and strong and stable, and we want this process to have at least started and pretty much done by the time we go on pointe. We don't want to be going on pointe with bones that are so soft and malleable that they can actually become permanently deformed as a result of doing the pointe work, which, yeah, we don't want that. But again, age is very mobile. You might get a dancer who matures really young and is super strong. And especially if they're in like full-time dance training at some top ballet school, of course, they might be strong enough to go on pointe a little bit younger than that. That's not what I'm saying here. But I'm talking more averages. You also might get someone who matures really late. So they might be 12, 13, and they're still not ready because they haven't had their growth spurt. Their bones are still very soft. And unfortunately, the safest bet is to hold back in that situation. I know it's heartbreaking. I know it's so frustrating if it's you, but it is much safer to wait until your bones are that much stronger, and your muscles are stronger and your bones are much firmer. We also need to be mentally prepared for it. Yeah, it's not comfortable going on pointe. If they're properly fitted and you've got the correct accessories, yes, some people Don't really recommend ouch pouches, but there's also animal wool that you can use that's more breathable. Ouch pouches can be a bit sweaty around your toes, which again can sort of make your toes a bit prone to infection. And if your skin's soft and sweaty, it's more prone to get blisters. But yeah, your feet can be a bit prone to blisters when you're doing point work. You can get sore toes simply through, if you haven't kept your toenails trimmed, they can push into the nail bed, which again can make your toes sore. So there are a few things that you need to do to prepare for that, and mentally preparing for it as well is quite a big thing, because you have to be quite focused. You can't be at the stage where you're thinking, oh yeah, dance is just a hobby, whatever, I'm going to chat with my friends in between exercises and not really focus on what the teacher's saying, because she's focused on Lucy over there and I'm not really worried about that. I'm sure I'm doing that right. So you have to have a slightly different mentality in class. You have to be a little bit more focused and assume that every bit of information that the teacher is giving, even if it's being given to somebody else, will be relevant to you as well. So be really diligent and really focused. And you have to be diligent with yourself, your practice between classes as well. You need to be at a stage where you're practicing between class. And I'd suggest having a regular time. Yeah, maybe get up 5-10 minutes early, do a couple of exercises before breakfast. It's actually easy. That's what I did when I was at college, and it made a big difference. So mentally, you need to be prepared. Physically, you need to be prepared. I've already said about age, but also physically, strength-wise. Yes, if your muscles haven't yet matured, or if you haven't really yet discovered your core, your hip placement, that's going to affect your position on points. Yeah, everything that you find a struggle on flat feet is even harder on point. I'm really sorry to say, but it is. That's another part of the challenge. So you need to be at a stage where your placement is nice and strong. So you're able to keep your hips nice and neutral. You're able to engage your core. You're able to hold your turnout in the tops of your hips. Things like that are really important. You're able to point your foot and keep it pointed, yes, without letting the foot relax, because you need that strength in order to be able to stand up on point. So all those little factors need to be taken into account. And you also need to have strong feet. I know that seems to be the most obvious thing, and that's the last thing I've come to. However, that is kind of the last thing that you do work on. Yes, in class, make sure every single tendu counts. Yes, every time you do a tendu, make sure you go through that foot, pressing into the floor, then stretching that ankle right to the very tips of the toes, because that will help make sure that your feet are building up the strength in the metatarsal muscles underneath. Yes, because that's what you're going to need to push you up on point. You'll also need your strong calf muscles. So we'll talk about those sort of exercises again in a bit. I'm so sorry if you can hear banging and crashing, but one of my neighbours is rebuilding their house basically. So yeah, you might hear a few crashes and bangs. So I've talked about age, I've talked about mental resilience and mental focus. I've talked about your physical strength and your technique. You also should be doing 2 classes minimum a week. Yes, ideally 2 ballet classes a week before doing point work, because if you're just doing it once a week, that's one day in which you're going to ballerina mode, and then the other 6 days you're normal mode. The more times you can go into ballet dancer mode in a week, the more natural that's going to be, the more natural that turnout situation in your hips is going to feel, the more natural it is to hold the core and hold your hips neutral. So if you make sure that you're doing 2 ballet classes a week, that will set you up for doing point work as well. So it also takes a little bit of time to prepare. So whenever I start a new point work class, and I really love preparing dancers for point work because it's quite exciting. Everyone really wants to get there, and there's a little bit of a kind of competition going on because everyone wants to be the first one. And I do generally, and I don't do this on purpose, but I do generally do one person on point at a time. I'll get everybody working at the same level, working on exercises, and as I see one person getting close to being ready, I'll have my eye on them, and once I've done my assessment, I will say when they're ready to get their point shoes fitted. I don't just do that for arbitrary reasons. I do that because then I can see that person get onto point. I can get them to try their point shoes on before they put the ribbons and the darning on them, and double check that the fitting is correct. and I can work with that person at a time. If you've got 5 people going on to point at the same time in the same class for the first time, it's really tricky. So I like to do it one at a time. And it's not, I explain to the dancers that this is not about being mean. This is about making sure that each person gets the correct attention on their first session on point. Please, please do get your point shoes properly fitted. Please don't be tempted to buy them off Amazon or even off the dance shop, the dance uniform shops. I know lots of websites do sell point shoes. However, they're for people who've already had their point shoes fitted. They know what size they are. They're just replacing their old pair that have worn out. Yes. So once you've stopped growing, rather, and you know what size, what width, what style, what make of point shoe suits your foot perfectly, then you can go and order online but for your first fitting. I know in the UK you usually have to book an appointment. I strongly recommend going to a shop where they have a range of makes. I know it's tempting to have a lovely day at the Freed shop or the Block shop or the Porcelli shop. However, there are some lovely dance shops that have a whole range of brands. And the thing is every brand is slightly different. It has a slightly different style, a slightly different shape of shoe, a slightly different strength of shoe. And you will find it much easier to try a selection of shoes and find the shoe that works best for you. If you go to a proper dance ballet shop or dance shop that specializes in point shoes as well, they will have the knowledge, they will know what accessories to suggest for you. They might suggest ouch pouches. They might suggest toe separators, especially if you've got potential for bunions. They might suggest all sorts of other things. So really do take their advice. I do recommend, and I know the Royal Academy of Dance recommend, avoiding elastics to start with. And I'm not sure, the jury's out for me on elasticated ribbons at the moment, because I like the security you get from when I put my ballet shoes on, if I really flex my foot and tie the ribbons as tight as they can, that is actually for me a perfect tightness of ballet shoe ribbon. Whereas if they're elasticated, it's quite hard to tell. But that's me. I'm old school on that one. They might be perfect. They might be brilliant. But yeah, certainly having extra elastics as well as your ribbons. I know sometimes the heel can slip off if the ribbons aren't sewn in the right place. So really try to make sure when you get to that stage that you put the ribbons in the right place. But that's another video, to be honest. I'll do that another time. So yeah, if you can avoid adding elastics, that will be really good, because it just gets really cluttered and you start to get a bit dependent on the elastics, and that's another thing that's impinging on all your tendons around your ankles. So you don't really necessarily want extra impingement around your ankles. So I've just gone through the main things. First of all, we have to think about age. What age is suitable for starting point work, which is generally around about age 11, once you've started or gone through your growth spurt. We've also gone through the mental maturity that you need. We've also talked about your technique and strength, your overall strength, muscle strength and actual placement and technique. And we've also talked about the fact that you should really be doing two or more classes a week, really, to be getting ready for point work. And realistically, if you're mature as a dancer, you should be practicing between those classes. And I mean intentional practicing, really working on your technique. So maybe taking a specific focus and working on that element to make sure that your placement is really strong. What you will find is any little niggly habits that you have in your normal ballet class when you're dancing on flat feet will get exaggerated even more when you're on point. So it's something to bear in mind, that if you already know there are a few little habits that aren't quite right, they need to be addressed when you go on point. You don't have to have 180-degree turnout to be on point, but you do need to be able to hold the turnout that you have, in your hip sockets. Okay, so that's another one that needs to be really addressed, because thinking about it, when you're on flat foot, you've got the whole foot. Yeah, all that lovely friction can help hold you in place. Yes, it can. Not saying that you should rely on friction to hold your turnout. And I've noticed at the Royal Ballet School they have really slippery floors, which is actually great for pirouettes, but it makes it really challenging to hold your turnout. You have to use the muscles in the tops of your legs. But yeah, there is a certain amount of natural friction that will help hold your legs turned out. When you go on a rise, that surface area is even smaller. So yes, you're more likely to start losing that turnout if your muscles aren't fully engaged in the top of your hips. And if your hips aren't being held neutral, it's going to be really hard to engage those muscles. So you need to be holding the hips neutral so that then those muscles can engage to turn the legs out. So imagine when you're going on pointe, you've got a platform about that big, so that much friction to help hold you. In fact, zero friction to help hold you turned out, which is why when you do a pirouette on pointe, you can spin. So if you're on balance, you can spin and spin and spin. But if you're not on balance, it's quite hairy. So those little things all need to be taken into account. So it can take a long time to prepare for pointe work. I do recommend, if you can, getting checked out by a doctor, but that's not always possible. I do appreciate. Certainly, if you've got any physical issues that are causing you problems with your feet already, you definitely need to get checked out by a doctor, because you don't want to be exacerbating anything that you've already got starting to cause a problem. Okay, so that's something that's quite important to get checked out. So those are my overall things to be thinking of when you're preparing for pointe work. So we've talked about strong core to hold yourself nice and strong. A bit like when you do partner work. If you're not strong and you're sort of soft and loose up top, you're going to feel heavier as you go on, as you get lifted. Yeah, you're going to make yourself heavier for the boy or girl to lift you. Whereas if you're nice and held in your core, so you're like a stick, yeah, it's easy to lift you. Same with going on pointe. If you're like relaxed, getting on pointe is going to be a real chore. If you're held nice and strong, you can get on pointe nice and easily. You need to have straight legs too, yes? And this is something I struggled with as well, and I still have a little bit of an issue with it. I have to really consciously stretch my legs. I don't have beautifully sway back legs, so I have to really consciously straighten my legs. It's very easy to kind of let your knees slightly relax. Yeah, certainly if you're trying to go right over on pointe, you can kind of do that a little bit, which we really don't want. We want those knees need to be really pulled up, nice and strong, so you have lovely straight legs, yes, and stretched ankles. And having what we call 90-degree plantar flexion is super important, because basically you want to be able to get over on that pointe. So here's a pointe shoe, yes. If you're not over on it properly, you're going to be kind of like that, yes. It's got a lovely little platform that's flat to help you stay on pointe. You want to be right over on that platform, and for that you need to have what we call 90-degree plantar flexion. Yeah, so it needs to go from your knee right the way through to the tip of your toe. Okay, if it's not, if it's like that, you're going to be like that on your pointe. You're going to be on this part of the pointe shoe, which is not going to be very stable for you. It's going to make it really hard for you to balance on pointe, and you're going to have to be using so many more muscles. Once you can lock that ankle into place and have a straight knee, stretched ankle, super stretched leg, it gives you the stability to be able to stand on pointe on one leg for a period of time without falling off that pointe. For many of our dancers, that's one of the last things to get. To help you with that, I have a few tips. Yes, first of all, every single tendu, think about doing ankle then the toes as you slide your foot. I've shown you this before, but go stretch the ankle first, then point the toes, in order to get that lovely stretch of the ankle and really work on that plantar flexion. Every single tendu, I always say to my dancers, make every tendu count, especially in the preparation for pointe work. But also, once you're on pointe, this is where it gets really important. You still need to make every tendu count. You can't get on pointe and go, oh yeah, I'm on pointe now, I can forget about all the exercises. So I'm going to show you some exercises that will help you build up your strength for pointe work, both in your feet and your technique. So the most obvious one is rises. So basically, when you're rising, You might have slightly knobbly knees, which might prevent you from getting your ankles actually together, in which case I suggest using a squishy ball or something between your ankle bones so that you've got something to press against. When you do a rise, your weight should be straight down so that it hits the floor between the big toe and that second toe. Yes, can you see my little toes aren't really flat on the floor? If I was to put my weight over my toes evenly, it would be like that. And can you see how my feet are bending out over the side? Yeah, circling over my little toe, which is really not good for my ankles. So correct that, get it so my weight is between my big toe and my second toe, which usually means having your ankles together like that, and then rise and lower. So you go rise and lower, and doing these as much as you can, nice and slowly, maybe while you're cleaning your teeth, while you're waiting for the kettle to boil, while you're waiting for your toast to cook, whatever you're doing, little rises and down. And making sure you go straight up. You're not kind of going like that. You're going straight up, straight down. You're also not letting your knees bend. Can you see? Some people, especially if you haven't got a huge amount of plantar flexion, can you see I'm stretching my ankles as much as I can? Some people can't do that, so they slightly go like that to get over those feet a bit more. No, you have to stretch those knees so that you're stretching those ankles as much as you can. Yeah, trying to get as vertical as possible. That alone is going to help you tenfold. Once you've mastered that, try it with one leg. Again, so much harder, very good for you. Okay, you can also do it turned out as well, again to help get used to spiraling those legs at the top of the legs. So you keep those heels forward. They can very easily fall back like that. You want to keep them forward, so you're using the top of your legs to spiral that turn out. With all those exercises, you can use a bar or something to hold for stability, or a wall or something so that you're nice and stable. Then once you're comfortable, you want to be doing those in the center with no support around you at all. Same with one leg in the center. It's quite tricky. You need to use your whole body. Think of the whole body going up and the whole body coming down. Yes. Another one to do is being in parallel. This is for control. And again, you can do it with a bar to start with and then come into the center. And that's literally in parallel, fondue and stretch, and fondue and stretch. Making sure that your knee goes directly over your middle toes. There's no kind of wobbling around like that. Yeah, fondue and stretch. Feeling your weight on the three spots, your big toe, your little toe, and your heel. Nice and even. Doing that, obviously make sure you always do both legs so you're nice and balanced whenever you do these exercises. And ideally you want to be bringing this into the center, away from the bar, so you're really making sure that you're having to use your control. You're not relying on a wall for stability for that exercise. Once you've got used to those, you want to be doing in turned out relevés, up and down and up. It's a bit tricky on sticky floor with bare feet, but in ballet shoes or socks, it's much easier to feel the slide. Yes, making sure that your legs are staying turned out from the top, so your heels are staying forward and turned out. And then you want to be trying Echappés, so out and down and out and down. A common mistake with these is that, and people forget about holding their turnout in the tops of their legs. So that's one to really, really practice. And again, the more you can get used to doing movements on 3/4 point, the stronger you're going to be when you get actually onto point. It will really, really help you. So now we're going to get some really fun exercises. I've already shown these on Instagram and other channels, but I really enjoy these ones as well. So this is specifically for your metatarsal muscles. So first of all, it's the good old piano toes. Now, some people find this really hard. Some people find two toes go down at one point. That's okay. Just try and do it one toe at a time. The more you practice it, the better you'll get. And this is building up the strength in these little muscles here. Also, it's building up that mind over matter with your control of your toes. Another exercise to do is doming. Now, I've seen a lot of people do this and actually suggest that you scrunch your toes. They might suggest picking up pens and things like that. The problem with that is it's encouraging the toe scrunching. Okay, so we don't want the toe scrunching. So what we're going to do is look at those toes. You might want to hold the toes flat, and it's actually this part of the foot that you're working. So keep your heel still, and you're going to be shortening the distance between the knuckle and your heel. So you're going, I'll turn it that way. You're going to go there. Oops, that's scrunched. Yep, there, like that. Can you see? And as I do that, I'm actually creating, you might be able to see a little bit of light under here. I'm creating a little arch between my knuckles here and my heel, scrunching that back. Okay. If you need to, put your fingers on your toes to prevent them from scrunching up and curling up. Yes, you don't want to scrunch your toes, because when you go on point, you want the toes to be straight, not scrunched. So another exercise that is really good, and that is for building up the strength of your plantar muscles again, and again doesn't encourage the scrunching of your toes. You get a Theraband. You place your heel on the Theraband, keep that firm, and you draw this up here, flex your foot fully, draw this over the top of your knee, really flex that foot up, draw that over there, make sure it's flat so you don't hurt your knee, and then bring it round to the other side, and then sit up nice and tall. So every exercise you're doing when you're doing these build-up exercises, sit up nice and straight, so it's, again, engaging your core and helping that improve. And you're going to slowly go down and slowly go up. This is a Theraband, yes? So it's made of silicone, or some of them are made out of rubber. And it's a lovely stretchy band. You can get them in different strengths. You can often buy them in a pack of 3 with 3 different strengths. Start with a soft one and build up your strength. And basically, you never want it to ping. So you're going to go slowly down and slowly up. You might see my foot shaking. That's absolutely fine. Just means my foot's working. And what you're doing is you're creating resistance and you're working against that resistance. Okay. The reason I've got my toes bent back is, again, to discourage scrunching of the toes. There you go. And again, you'd obviously do that on the other leg as well to make sure you're nice and even. Yes. So once you've done that and you've built up a nice lot of strength, another Theraband exercise, whilst I have the band out, is what I call toe sit-ups. Okay. So I'd do this. I'm going to sit back a bit so that you can see my foot. So have a little bit of Theraband at the top. Ideally, you'd want a slightly wider Theraband than this. This one's a little bit narrow. And again, nice and flat with your Theraband. This time, you stretch your ankle fully. Can you see my ankle is nice and fully stretched? Again, making sure it's not sickled, making sure it's in alignment. My toes are uncurled. That's really important. And you're just going to slowly stretch your toes and flex your toes, not curling those toes. Stretch and flex. Stretch and flex. It's quite hard not to do that. Yeah, so that's why you don't necessarily do this at the beginning. You do this once you've got that uncurled toe set up nice and strongly. So that's building up the strength to go from there to there. Okay, finally, we have one more exercise. Once you've been doing all that building on your muscles, you want to be relaxing. So get yourself, this is like, I got this in America, so I don't know exactly the best place to get them in England. I know they sell something similar on Amazon, but for me, they're quite hard, some of them. The ball of this is really hard. The inside is like a golf ball, but the outside is slightly rubbery. Yeah, so it's a little bit squishy. And I literally roll my feet to relax those muscles in the sole of my foot. I roll it all the way up, all the way down, around my heel, nice and gentle. Don't press too hard. You don't want to hurt yourself. You don't want to bruise the sole of feet. You're just gently easing out all the tendons and the fascia. You've got a sheet of very, very thin sheet-like tendon over all your muscles that kind of holds them in place. It's a bit like cling film underneath your skin, and it's called fascia. And that can get quite tight sometimes, especially when you're building and working on muscles like this. And doing that will really, really help release it. And then what you can also do to help with the uncurling of the toes is a little massage. So get the toe uncurled like that and then massage it. So you've got the ball of the foot on the floor and you're massaging that toe up. And I'd take a good few minutes on each toe. I'd massage this toe up and I'll go along toe by toe by toe, making sure they're properly uncurled, especially when you get to the little toes, properly uncurling those toes and massaging along. And like I said, I would spend a couple of minutes on each of those just to make sure they're really, really uncurled. And then maybe not give another little roll, relaxation. One more anti-curling exercise, and it's a ballet step, a pas de cheval. So basically, when you're doing a pas de cheval, yes, you're bringing your foot in and uncurling it. So basically, you don't have to do the fondue if you don't want to, but just uncurling those toes. Can you see? It's uncurling the toes. So those are the exercises and tips that I can give you for now to help you with your point work. Please tell me if they work for you. Let me know in the comments below how you get on. And please share this with your friends who are studying for point work as well, because it's so valuable. And if it can help one person improve their point work, my day will be made. Okay? Do subscribe for more and yeah, enjoy. If you want to dance with me, check out bridgeballet.co.uk for the link to book a class, or you can join the bridgeballet.club where you can have a class with me anytime, night or day. See you later. Take care. Bye.